Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Crushing Land. Happy to be with you here again to discuss another pertinent piece of information when it comes to your land investing business. And today we're going to take some time to talk about how we communicate with our potential buyers of properties. This is a very interesting subject to me because it's so polarizing. And what I mean by that is there are so many different schools of thought when it comes to this, and people are so focused on like what they say. They just kind of get stuck in a mold and a certain way of doing it, and that's like all that they'll do. And it's very interesting to me because if everybody said the same thing, then you would sit there and say, well, that makes sense, right? That's the way to do it. But not only are they not saying the same thing, they're talking about different methods, they're talking about different ways, and they literally say, don't do what the other person is saying that they always do. So, how do we communicate with potential buyers? So, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk and give you a little bit of information and a little bit of background into how we run our business when we talk to potential buyers. And then I'll talk about why we do that. Okay. So there's different schools of thoughts, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. And then again, how we do it and why, as opposed to what others may say or do. And so, when it comes to talking to potential buyers, if you've watched other trainings, if you've watched other videos like this, whatever it may be, you may hear a few different things. One thing that I hear a lot is people saying that they don't want to talk on the phone to potential buyers. They basically want to wait until the very last second to speak to them. And what the point of that is that there's so many people out there that are just asking questions, and they don't want to waste time with them. And so basically I want to do everything that I can through messaging. That's the easiest way to do it. Now, on the flip side of that, there's people that say they only want to talk to people on the phone. I've heard people out there that are saying, like, if somebody expresses interest, then they need to reach out to you and say, here's my phone number, reach out, or give me your phone number and I'll reach out to you and we'll discuss it. And in reality, I would say that there needs to be a balance between those two things. So, first off, when it comes to communicating with potential buyers, I let the potential buyer dictate how the communication is going to go. There's people out there that'll say that you can only go so far in a message, so they want to get them right on the phone right to begin with. The problem with that is a couple different things. One, just because you get them on the phone doesn't mean that they're going to buy. So it's more time that you're wasting. If you're having these regular phone conversations, if you have a close rate with your potential buyers of 90%, then yeah, go on the phone with them all the time. But the problem is people don't do that. Right? They're not having a 90% close rate. So you're wasting time having these phone conversations with this person because if they're only somewhat interested, if they're just looking for information, that information could easily have been shared through just a message or something like that, and then you can follow up with them and see if they're still interested, right? So you're wasting a lot of extra time driving them to that phone call that's not going to accomplish anything more. Also, I've had people that just don't want to talk on the phone, and over the years I have sold numerous, not just one or two, but numerous, into the hundreds of properties without ever talking to the buyer. It's either text message, it's through a messaging app, through email, whatever it may be, because that's the way that they want to communicate. And in a previous episode of Crushing Land, one of the things I talked about was talking with sellers the way that they like to communicate, right? That's one of the reasons we talked about using different methods. You can use letters, you can use text messages, you can use calls, different things like that. Why? Because everybody responds differently and they like to communicate differently. And so the letter may be a little bit more something that you would sit there and say, well, I would respond better to a letter than getting a text message. That's not true for everybody, right? Some people just take the letter and throw it away, and then they get a text message and they're happy to respond to that. Well, the same is true for your buyers, right? Buyers are still the same people, right? They're not the exact same people, but they're still the same people out there. And so they like to communicate the way they like to communicate. And that could be email. That could be messaging, or it could be picking up the phone. So to sit there and say that you need to have a phone conversation with somebody in order to actually see that they're legit is not true. I have sold tons and tons and tons of properties over the years without ever speaking to the person. In fact, we have one buyer that we've had that has continued, they've looked at our website and they've continued to come back and purchase properties from us. I don't know how many properties they've actually purchased, but they purchased quite a few and have never had a phone conversation with that person because that's not the way that they communicate. So the person that sits there and says, well, you have to talk to them on the phone to see if they're just a tire kicker or if they're legit or not, that's not true. What you need to do is you need to know how to ask the right questions in the way that you're communicating with them. The form of communication doesn't matter. Just because you get them on the phone doesn't mean that they're less of a tire kicker than somebody that's not. There's plenty of tire kickers that'll just talk on the phone and just want to ask a million questions and waste a half an hour of your time. Happens all the time. Right. So just because they're on the phone, maybe you take it as they're a little bit more serious, but some people just like to talk on the phone. So they're not. So it's all about the questions that you're asking, the type of communication that you're having with them. The method of communication doesn't matter. It's all about the quality of the communication. And that's what the key here is in communicating with potential buyers. It's all about the quality and getting rid of the tire kickers, being able to have follow-up. I've talked about follow-up in so many different things. Follow-up, even with your buyers in different ways and things like that. Now, for the person that sits there and says they never want to talk on the phone, well, again, I don't subscribe to that either. Why? Because some people want to talk on the phone. So if you're buyer is reaching out and saying, can I call you? Can we talk on the phone? Then your first question, your first answer should be absolutely yes, right? Here's my number. Have a conversation with them. Or what's your number? And have a conversation with them. Call them up. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to talk to them on the phone, but you also don't want to run away from it. So the key here that we're going to talk about, again, with communication, just the key takeaway from this is it's about the quality of the communication. It's about what you say to the person, but the means of doing it, whether it's in a message, whether it's in a phone call, whether it's in an email, it doesn't matter. And if you get that skill down well to be able to communicate, you'll notice that you will sell a lot more properties because of it. So it's something that you really want to work on when you're communicating with buyers. Now, when it's time to send them an agreement, there's also differing schools of thoughts with this. And people say, well, I need you to send me an email or I need you to call me. Usually it's an email or a text, something like that, because they say, well, I need a written offer. I need some sort of written offer, even if it's not a contract on the property. And that's just an extra step that gets in the way. So we don't do that at all. I don't believe in that. I've never done that. What we simply do is we come to terms with them and say, what's your information? And we then email them the contract through DocuSign immediately so that they're able to sign it and send it back to us, right? So we're controlling it that way. We're getting it to them. We're putting those terms in that they've already talked to, whatever what we've agreed to, negotiate either on the phone or text message or email or whatever it may be. We are now sending that to that buyer so that they are then able to sign that and get it back to us. So you're jumping on that and getting that done immediately. This isn't stalling this out for days on end and waiting for them to do something back. No, you've got somebody there that's sitting there and saying, I'm interested in this property and I will pay you $20,000 for it, right? Is that your offer? Yes, it is. Great, I'll take that. What is your name? What's your email address so that I can send you the agreement right now? And send it to them. Why do you want to add an extra step where they're reaching back out to you to prove that they're very serious about it? They just told you, right? So don't muddy up the waters even more, right? And then obviously if you have digital signing and things like that, it's very easy for them and you can do the follow-up steps necessary with them where it sends them a reminder and things like that to actually go ahead and sign it. So again, communication is key. That's the thing here. The communication with your buyers, just like your sellers, is key to success. What method you use, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I would say that we have sold, if I was to break it down, I'd have to look at my numbers and I honestly don't know what they are, but I would say, we are basically probably dead even because that's the way people are, right? I've had numerous properties that I've sold only by having a messenger conversation with people. Numerous properties that I've only sold having a text message conversation with people. Numerous properties that I've sold having a phone conversation with people. Numerous properties that I've sold only emailing people, right? And conversely, we've had people that have literally just come to our website and put a down payment and said, send me a contract, right? So that happens too. So these are different examples there that we're talking about where people just jump in and communicate the way that they feel comfortable. So communicate with them the way that they feel comfortable, but make sure that your communication has high quality. And if you do that and then you follow through and you get them the contract and do all the things that we're talking about, if you do all of those things, you will see that your sales of these properties go up. You'll have better results. You'll sell more properties because of it. So thank you everyone for joining us on this episode of Crushing Land. We'll catch you next week for another in-depth episode just like this.